He got outboxed thoroughly by Bivol Saturday night, but nobody wanted to see that fight. We don't care. It's about the fights that we want to see. I think that Canelo should fight David Benavidez or Jamal Charlo, but I'm tired of this guy being unblemished in his career, and these big fights Charlo is not getting. He deserves them. He should have them if he wants them, even if I wouldn't pick him against Canelo. He deserves the shot if that's what he wants.
How can you be taking risks against 5-1, 6-1 underdog? Better yet, how are you fighting legacy fights when you're fighting against fighters no one ever heard of or requested Canelo to fight? Obviously, these are self-explanatory rhetorical questions. That's why, just like Teofimo Lopez ducked Devin Haney to fight Kambosos, this is better yet another episode of cherry picking going wrong and the cherry biting back. So Devin Haney gave his reaction to the European assassin Canelo Alvarez getting assassinated last night by Bivol, where Devin Haney said, quote, "The boxer always prevails. Canelo is also a boxer but banked on his power too much." End of the quote. It's ironic that Canelo can box, but he lost every single minute of every single round to Bivol. I mean, when is the last time we seen a real pound-for-pound number one lose in that type of fashion? That's why it's more than fair to say that old media pound-for-pound number one hype job in Canelo Alvarez got exposed, just like Lomachenko, Kovalev, Gennady Golovkin, and Roman Gonzalez did, while Terrence Bud Crawford, the true pound-for-pound number one, still remains supreme. However, the bad news, old media deception cycle still continues. It doesn't end here. Just like when Lomachenko lost and Canelo bypassed Crawford on the pound-for-pound list. Now, peep game. As soon as old media saw Canelo Alvarez lose, some way, somehow, Usyk is going to bypass Crawford. In fact, they already doing it. All of a sudden, I see a lot of old media members claim that Usyk is now pound-for-pound number one. Notice how no one from old media ever questioned who is pound-for-pound number one, Canelo or Usyk, before Canelo Alvarez lost. Just like no one ever questioned who is pound-for-pound number one, Lomachenko or Canelo, before Lomachenko lost. We all know what time it is. NBF. And if Usyk loses, then watch how Inoue some way somehow bypassed Crawford to the number one slot, even though he just fought a guy that's 12-2 his last fight. It was such a cherry pick, it wasn't even televised on ESPN. Now you let Devin Haney, who old media don't even rank on the pound-for-pound list, if he fought a guy that's 12-2 right now, all hell will break loose. But Inoue, who they got on the top 5 pound-for-pound, he can do whatever he wants, even though a lot of old media have Inoue ranked as high as pound-for-pound number 2 on the rankings. I mean, even Stevie Wonder can see the double standards in the sport of boxing. And you best believe the old media recycled deception will continue until Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson become the pound-for-pound kings in boxing. However, even then, old media will give Devin Haney and Shakur the Terrence Crawford treatment by not recognizing them as such, not giving them the credit they have already earned, since they don't have the complexion for the connection like Canelo and Lomachenko. They only have the complexion for the neglection like Terrence Bud Crawford. And the same people that failed for the old media deception today by calling Canelo pound-for-pound number one over Crawford will fall for the same deception then. So all of these fighters on the coincidental list have to be aware, especially those who have a bigger mic than others. Keep the same energy. If you do end up in Terrence Crawford's shoes, follow old media deception even then, because there is no point of speaking the truth at that point. And that's what a lot of champions, trainers, and people need to realize. Do you want to be on the right side of history or the wrong side of history? I mean, even though I can't really blame them, the deception is too real, which makes it more of a reason to stay woke. And that's exactly what Akhi's new media provides, is the whole absolute truth, and Akhi always put it together like puzzle every single time. With the facts being laid out, I'm going to leave you guys with an interview with Devin Haney himself, the WBC lightweight world champion, just to show you guys how some of the best champions fall for the old media deception with ease. Check it out, and I'll be right back.
Bro, it's high on the pound for pound list. I got Crawford 1/2 behind Canelo, and I got Earl Spence like right after him. So, yeah.
So you have Canelo number 1, Crawford number 2, and Errol number 3?
Yeah, between Earl and Crawford, like it's like you can switch him out on any given day.
When it comes to Canelo Alvarez, you don't think the fact that he created and he was the pioneer of the franchise title, you don't think that stains his pound for pound status?
No, you gotta respect him. He became undisputed after that. He moving up again, another weight class. He won his first title at 147. Now he
154.
What did he fight Matthew Hatton at?
I think it was Ricky Hatton brother, Matthew Hatton. He was a 147 pounder, but he moved up to 154 to fight Canelo for a vacant title at 154.
You can't, knock him. His resume speaks for itself. That's like me going up to 154. I mean, you got to respect it.
Yeah, you're right in the sense that Canelo Alvarez did become undisputed in the weakest division in boxing. But why do you think Canelo Alvarez turned down undisputed at 160 against Andrade for his biggest payday at the time, but he obviously fought for undisputed at 168? Why do you think he wasn't as interested, even though that's a goal that he set out for himself at 160?
Putting the fact that he's fighting in June aside, can you give me your thoughts about the possibility of a fight against Dmitry Andrade and the prospect of becoming the undisputed champion?
Sí, no, el que tenga el título, eso es lo que queremos el título, y pues obviamente ese es el objetivo, ¿no? Vamos a sentarnos con nuestro equipo a ver qué es lo que viene, pero el objetivo es ganar los 4 títulos en peso medio.
Yes, that's the goal. Look, whoever has the title, doesn't matter. Our goal is to unify all the belts, become the undisputed middleweight champion of the world.
I can't really say. I don't really remember too much of that time period. I can only speak now. I don't know. I think that Canelo is beating the best fighters in the world. Anybody that they put in front of him, he's beating, and you cannot take it away from him. No matter what you say, I mean, it's hard to take him away.
When it comes to Canelo Alvarez, you don't think getting tested positive for steroids, you don't think that stains his pound for pound status or his legacy as a whole in the sport of boxing?
I mean, when that comes up in any sport, they always look to discredit or, put that on your name. But at the end of the day, whenever that happened, whatever he's doing now, I'm sure he's doing VOD or whatever the case may be, he's still beating the top fighters in the world. And I know that they tested him now. So it's a microscope on him, the testing, and he's still beating the best fighters. So you can't not take nothing away from him. He is the guy right now.
I try to stay away from the best pound for pound, with Canelo for the various reasons that everyone tends to say different things. Why he didn't fight this person, didn't fight that person. You know what I mean? But I'll just say that this is that he is a good fighter, right? I look forward to seeing the fight. But when you talk about the pound for pound, I just kind of try to stay away from it.
So you don't rate him as number 1?
Well, I don't rate him 1, Crawford, Earl Spence, any of those guys. I tend to just kind of stay away from the talk about who's number 1, because it's a lot of other factors and circumstances that I'm not 100% privy of, and I just tend to stay away from it. That question.
Who do you believe is number 1 in the world?
Devin Haney.
Who's the most accomplished?
I'd have to give it some thought. You know what I'm saying?
Speaking of Devin Haney, I mean, he is on record saying that the franchise is a witness protection title. The franchise is for ducks. So that's why you don't rate Canelo as the best, because of him creating the franchise belt?
No, the franchise title is a way to duck your mandatory. I have mandatories. I'm the WBC champion and I have mandatories. When I was his mandatory, he petitioned to become a franchise champion to where he didn't have any mandatories. Devin Haney has mandatories. The franchise title is for ducks.
A franchise champion means you didn't have to fight your mandatory. That's a duck. So Devin collects the belt because what else is he supposed to do?
Well, no, it's a lot of things that you have to take a look at when determining, who's the number one fighter, how they became the number one fighter, what they did when they became the number one fighter, so on and so forth. So for those reasons, I just stay away from it.
Right. Well, Devin Haney is also on record saying that Eddie Ronaldo, his whole camp is on that shit. So knowing that information at hand, you can't be the best in the world and a cheater at the same time. At least if you cheated in the past before. How do you view that?
Oh, absolutely. I don't believe in cheating, and I don't believe in anyone being rated high should they get caught cheating.
I want to touch on this because a lot of people ask me, what's your thoughts on Devin Haney saying Canelo is pound for pound number one? Do you agree with him? How come you don't agree with Devin Haney now? So I asked these people, do you agree when Devin Haney said the franchise is a witness protection title? The franchise is for ducks. Do you agree with Devin Haney when he said that? Because if you do, then you agree Canelo is a duck. Do you agree when Devin Haney said Eddie Ronaldo's entire camp is on that shit? If you do, then you agree that Canelo is a cheat. We know that for a fact, right? I personally
but that's just boxing politics. That's boxing politics. It's the same thing with Shakur saying Tyson Fury to beat Ali. Like
what I was getting to with the Devin Haney situation is, see, these fighters follow the popular narrative. It's a lot of deception. If there's 100 people in a room and 99 people saying that 2 + 2 is equal 5, now the answer is 4, but you might start questioning yourself, like, hold on. Is the answer 4 or is it 5? Because everybody's screaming out 5. Am I crazy? But that's the most powerful weapon that old media has, is numbers, is deception, is their narrative that they push with their old media machine. And see, when Devin Haney came out and said that Canelo entire camp is on that shit, when Devin Haney said that the franchise is for ducks and Canelo created the duck belt, right? So when Devin Haney said these things, you got to realize we live in a social media time where you could really reach anybody. So he received a lot of backlash for speaking the truth. After he received a lot of backlash for speaking the truth, he decided to make it up by pleasing the Canelo fans to say something that they want to hear. Oh, Canelo number one. You know what, guys? Canelo number one. But clearly it doesn't add up, because if Canelo is a cheat and he's on steroids, if Canelo is a duck, well, being a cheat and a duck doesn't add up to becoming pound for pound number one. You can't say someone is the best while being a cheat and a duck at the same time, right? So we clearly know Devin Haney was forced to say that by Canelo fans because of the backlash he received, right? So we see the pattern. These fighters like Gervonta, like Devin Haney, anybody that say Canelo's number one is because of the deception and the manipulation by old media, because they forced to. If they say otherwise, they're going to receive a lot of backlash, which that's exactly what they try to avoid. However, in the sport of boxing, being the best pound for pound, being pound for pound number one doesn't mean the most popular fighter in the world. Being the number one pound for pound means who is the best in the world. Now, me and you could agree, if Crawford was in Canelo's shoes today, we see it. We know it's a fact. He want to fight Errol Spence and he want to fight Jermell Charlo. Canelo turned down the Jermell Charlo fight at 154 to fight Crooklyn, a C-level fighter that got knocked out. Canelo actually turned down that fight, for the people that don't know. So Jermell left Golden Boy. Crawford moving up in weight. He want to fight Errol Spence for undisputed, and he want to fight Jermell Charlo for undisputed. Unlike Canelo, who turned down undisputed.
Don't get me on about Crawford, bro. I mean, honestly, from my point of view, when it comes to that situation in itself, it just made clear sense. Let's forget about it. Like, if we're really talking about it, 154, he lost to Mayweather. So his legacy in 154 is nothing.
If you pay attention to Canelo's legacy, first of all, when he fought for a vacant belt at 154, he was ranked number 4. He fought for the WBC vacant belt against a fighter who wasn't even ranked. Ricky Hatton brother. Listen, he wasn't ranked at 154. Ricky Hatton brother wasn't even ranked at 147.
He moved up in weight.
Yeah, he moved up in weight, and he wasn't even ranked at the division that he moved up from, 147, right? He fought him. Marquez sued the WBC for that type of corruption. People don't talk about that, but more importantly, he lost to Floyd.
Oh,
Lara. He lost to Floyd. He lost to Lara, moved up. Got caught taking steroids. Arguably lost to Triple G twice. Then moved up to 168. and stole David Benavidez's belt. And he haven't fought Benavidez to this day. Matter of fact, he turned down his biggest payday yet to Benavidez. He turned down Undisputed.
Yeah, and on top of that, why would he not fight Benavidez?
Because
Benavidez
he don't fight Mexicans. He only fight Europeans. He told
exactly.
you. I don't fight Mexicans.
Literally.
I don't fight Mexicans. He literally volunteered
No,
the
he
information.
fights Chavez Senior's son, who everyone knows is a joke in boxing. He made that fight so serious, like, oh, this means a lot to me, and this is a fight that's important to my race. And I'm like, bro, no one cares about Chavez. Chavez Senior even said it in public that Chavez Jr. is a joke. So why would you even take that fight?
But more importantly, when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, what you guys have to realize, he grew up watching his favorite fighters lose to the fighters on the coincidental list. I always say boxing is built on nationality and pride. So when Canelo grew up watching his favorite fighters lose to these fighters on the coincidental list, you guys could check the stats. You guys could do the homework. 99% of all fighters, they lost for sure to an undefeated Black American fighter or to a Black fighter, period. But more importantly, they lost their undefeated record to a fighter on the coincidental list. Chavez Sr., Barrera, Canelo Alvarez, that's just few names that come to mind. They lost their undefeated record to fighters on the coincidental list. So Canelo knows the pattern. Matter of fact, it happened to him. So that's why he chose this path of creating the NBF league in the sport of boxing, because what's understood don't have to be explained. Just like basketball, the best athletes in basketball are the Black athletes, just like it is in boxing. So what Canelo decided to do, he decided to eliminate them from the race. So he only decided to race against Europeans and then claim he's the fastest man in the world, but he won't race against the Devin Haneys, the Shakur, the Charlo, the Andre. He won't race against them guys, but he claims he's the fastest. Meanwhile, they're the fastest when it comes to their speed, when it comes to their running. So is Canelo really the fastest in the world? Of course not, because he doesn't race against the fighters on the coincidental list. It's an NBF league, which is what you talked about. See, Floyd Mayweather changed the game like you talked about because he fought the best and beat the best, but he kept his undefeated record at the same time, right? That's how he became so popular.
Yeah.
That's why he sold all these pay-per-views. Floyd didn't just sell all these pay-per-views because people liked him. Nah, of course not. People tuned in because he
they want to see the best lose.
Yeah, he fought the best every time, and they really thought he was gonna lose, so they tuned in. But he beat him with ease. That's why even Mike said, "I don't like Floyd." But I gotta give him his credit. Every time I told him fight somebody, he went out there and fought him, and he watched him. That's what he told Jermell Charlo during the podcast. So my point is, Canelo Alvarez, on the other hand, he does the exact opposite. We tell him fight Charlo, fight Andre, fight Benavidez, payday.
No,
Meanwhile,
he called them boring. Payday.
Horrible fighter. Then he fight IV.
What does a payday mean? Like,
let me ask you this question. If Canelo always says payday, why is he turning down his biggest paydays though? Against Benavidez, Errol Spence, and Charlo, Andre, for his biggest payday, for his biggest legacy fights at the same time.
Yeah.
If it's all about payday, right? How come Canelo turns down his biggest paydays?